They're incredibly busy, so it was an event that required them really to be working not only on the slot process that they're there to work on, which is next winter's scheduling season, but also they're still working wholeheartedly on this summer. So teams that would usually be even looking at next summer right now are still working completely on this summer's tactical changes. So it's a really busy time for all of these teams still that really want to be getting ahead and doing their strategic planning. The slot system obviously has a slot use rule that we're now all well aware of, and that slot use rate does determine to some extent how busy the schedules are that are planned at one airport and the other end of the route. And so this summer, all the changes we're seeing taking place are really manifesting themselves in a very busy tactical management of the schedule day to day, and the airlines are still managing these schedules in a very, very short time frame. And part of that decision making is obviously how to manage any delay that manifests itself across the day into a delayed operation, and making sure those passengers get to where they need to be on the same day they're meant to be flying. But ultimately, if you're having to consolidate a flight from 2 or 3 operations down to 1, you've lost 3 operations that you may have been needing for your slot use rules. So there's still a direct impact on the slot use rate because of the delays and the big capacity issues we're seeing this summer, particularly in Europe. As always, flexibility. The airlines need the utmost flexibility right now, as do the airports. Everyone is clearly very challenged in this restart with staffing, resourcing and planning around what is an amazing amount of pent-up demand in the system, but actually managing that on a day-to-day basis, whether it's an ATC strike, there's a lack of staffing on security, you need to be able to change the schedule in advance and minimise the impact on the passengers. To do that, you want to be working at least 2, 3, if not more weeks in advance still, and we've still got this period open now for this summer peak. The airlines want to be able to have the certainty that if they make changes to their schedules, they're not penalised for that. And that goes to the extent that if it's, say, an ATC issue, if it's an airport capacity issue, if it's a staffing issue out of their hands, they should not be penalised for having to change their schedule accordingly. And all of this is obviously much more positive for the passenger if we can do it as far enough in advance as possible, because any reaccommodation that needs to take place, any stability we can put into the schedule from the airline's point of view by getting some of that thinning of the operation down to better manage the capacity that is available, will ultimately deliver the passenger a better experience. Obviously, in COVID, we had this situation where nobody was basically operating and there was full flexibility. Now we're ramping back up. You could argue the slot rules have come back far too quickly for what the actual system can manage and operate. And if you're back to high slot use levels and a lack of flexibility, airlines are forced to operate and plan a schedule that's much higher than airports, ground handling, fueling can operate. So if there is a layer of flexibility added back in and everyone has a moment to sort of stabilise the schedules again, thin some of the schedule out, reaccommodate those passengers on other flights in advance, the whole system will benefit from that. The UK, particularly in the last few weeks, it goes without saying there was a very high slot use rate. It's the highest in the world this summer in the UK at 70%, but credit where credit's due, the UK has pulled that lever and actually allowed airlines to return slots, which is going on right now. There's a 30% ability to return a level of schedule back to the coordinator and not be penalised for it. As always, each end of the route that has a slot on needs to work in the same way. So the slot board again has come out with a recommendation, which is the same as previous seasons, about how to manage slot relief as we go through this ramp-up period. We don't think winter's going to be significantly different to summer, and if anything, there's going to be other issues as we see the current COVID wave now. There could be another COVID wave. Nobody quite knows what's ahead, so you still need flexibility. There's still markets that are taking longer to reopen, demand's taking longer to come back. So we still need a level of relief, and we all agree, I think, that there's a lower usage threshold is appropriate. And actually this mechanism to get some slot returns, even at a capped level, maybe 20% even, really helps the airlines size the schedule to the operation that they think they can manage, and it gives advanced information to the airport over what what it is planned for that airport for the season. So what we don't want is this situation where schedules are fully planned accordingly to what the capacity is that's been given, and then they have to be reduced tactically. We want it to be done in a much more advanced fashion. So if there's going to be airport capacity issues, if there continues to be staffing issues, get that notice to the airports and the airlines in advance and get them to agree at local level that they reduce temporarily what's available to be allocated and thin the schedules down accordingly. And then you don't have the disappointment from passengers trying to book flights that then don't operate. We've all just been in Seattle at the winter slot planning conference. So the airlines already have their slots allocated for winter. They're now planning how to use them and operate them. We need the rules to be ascertained now. So essentially, before we see governments go on summer breaks, the airlines need to know what the slot rules are going to be.